about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.
This program allows voters to get information directly from the candidates in the May 18th municipal primary election. It is a joint project of the League of Women Voters of Berks County and Berks Community Television. Both are nonpartisan organizations that never support nor oppose political parties nor candidates. Today, our featured race is Judge of the Court of Common Pleas. The Court of Common Pleas hears trials of major criminal and civil matters. It hears matters involving families and children, and it hears appeals that come up from the minor courts. The current salary is $186,665, and judges serve a 10-year term. Now, voters in each party, the Republicans and the Democrats, will select 2 of 5 candidates. The 5 candidates are Tina Boyd, Osmer Deming, James Gavin, Kurt Geishauser, and Catherine Nadaroff. All will be asked the same questions in the same order with the same basic time limits. And each candidate's views are their own, and not necessarily those of the League or BCTV. Today, our candidate is Kurt Geishauser. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell us why you have decided to run for judge and what education and background you bring to this position.
Well, again, my name's Kurt Geishauser. I'm 51 years old. I live in Exeter Township. I've been married to my wife, Elaine, for 27 years. We have 6 children together. I see running for judge as an opportunity to get things done. I would like to move cases more efficiently, to have the system run more smoothly, and I would like ultimately parties to leave the system feeling that justice was done.
Is there a person or a moment in your life that influenced you to run for judge?
Well, coming out of law school, I clerked initially for a federal bankruptcy judge, Judge Thomas Twardowski, and then I went on to clerk for Judge Stephen B. Lieberman. He's in the Berks County Court of Common Pleas. He still sits as a senior judge, who was very inspirational to me. I think he really did justice for a lot of people and the system. And I think he was an inspiration to a lot of people.
Who is your favorite U.S. Supreme Court judge, past or present? And why?
I would say Neil Gorsuch. I think he's a brilliant jurist, just a brilliant man to begin with. And I would add that in October of 2019, I had the opportunity to be admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I sat in that court, and it is very inspirational. I think that citizens should take advantage of the fact that you can just show up on the day of any argument and go in and spectate, essentially. And it's just awe-inspiring, I think. We took all our kids, and it was really something to see.
If you were talking to someone who had no legal nor political background, how would you explain the difference between a conservative judge and a liberal judge?
Well, I believe, you're getting into 2 different concepts. A conservative judge at an appellate level is different than a conservative judge at a common pleas level. A conservative judge in the Berks County Court of Common Pleas, I would say, is a person that pretty much sticks to the traditional role of being a judge. A liberal judge at the common pleas level, I don't know that there's much wiggle room there for someone to get that much off track without being without facing consequences from appellate courts. I would say that.
Under what circumstances would you recuse yourself from a case?
I think it's commonsensical. I think if there appears to be any conflict of interest, then I would recuse myself from any case that came before me. Other than that, it's a court of general jurisdiction, so I would be prepared to see any kind of cases coming before me, and that would be fine with me.
How would you explain to citizens, say they're called for jury duty, how would you explain to them the duties that they have and the need for them to serve?
Well, first of all, the jury system that we have intact separates us from pretty much any other country in the world, and I'm a firm believer that it accomplishes very efficiently justice. And I would explain to citizens who came to jury duty, and I understand it's a burdensome task for some people, but I would tell people that this is your duty as a citizen, and you need to follow through with that. Otherwise, the whole system would collapse, and that's again what separates us from the other countries in the world, and I think that is a hallmark of our society and country as a whole.
What is the appropriate role for a common pleas judge in an end-of-life dispute brought to court by family members?
That's an interesting question. In fact, I'm not sure what you're asking there.
Well, let's say there's someone who is in a terminal illness and they don't have a living will, and two sides of the family are fighting whether that person should be kept on life support or person be allowed to die.
Well, I'm sure there's case law on the subject, which I would be bound to follow. I would suggest to all the viewers that a power of attorney and a living will, as you say, are essential documents to procure during your life, and in that way you wouldn't bring this situation up to your family and have to have this thing brought up in front of a judge.
In sentencing a convicted criminal, what factors should be considered? When is an alternate to jail appropriate?
Well, I'll say this, that there's a litany of factors to be considered. You have to consider the individual, the circumstances in which this crime was committed, his background, his chances of recidivism, and whether it was a violent offense or not. Certainly, and this is coming from a criminal defense attorney, certainly there are bad people out there that need to be put away to protect society. However, in my mind, that is a last resort. I think there's plenty of avenues for rehabilitation for people who commit crimes, and I would hope that we can avoid just stockpiling criminals in prisons, and honestly, I think if you look at any of the studies on how much it costs to house a prisoner, there are lesser means of protecting society depending on the individual.
Would you please give us your views on plea bargaining?
Plea bargaining gets a bad name, but it's necessary in that if every single case went to trial, the court system couldn't handle it. It's necessary in that the district attorney's office, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney have to weigh the strength of their cases, and based on that, decide if there is some kind of resolution that can resolve efficiently and justifiably a resolution for both parties involved.
If you are elected, in what area would you prefer to serve? Criminal, civil, family, or special court? Tell us why.
Honestly, any of the different divisions would be fine with me. Obviously, I've practiced mostly criminal defense law in my practice, so that would be natural. But I've also practiced more family law than most people would believe, and that would also be something that I would be happy to handle. Civil court, to me, is equally as accessible and easily handled, though treatment courts, or if that's what you're talking about, special courts, that is definitely something that I would be interested in as well. And that, again, is based more on a rehabilitation kind of attitude than punishment, which I would definitely be interested in.
Why is the position of judge so important that people should come out and vote for a judge?
Well, I think that to a certain extent, people don't realize how much power a judge has when they are on the bench until they have the misfortune of being a litigant. And I think that's why the general public should pay more attention to who they're electing judge, because at some point in your lives, you or your family may come upon this situation, and that's when you will realize that how much power a judge wields.
As a member of the judiciary, what can you do, either on or off the bench, to ensure that all Pennsylvanians have access to justice?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think, Pennsylvanians, especially in Berks County, have, I believe, readily access to justice in the courts. If not through Mid-Penn Legal Services, through the Public Defender's Office, through even the Berks County Law Library provides assistance to pro se litigants. So I think that judges per se don't really play a role in what kind of access that citizens have to justice, other than applying the law equally and fairly to all that appear before them, whether they're represented by attorneys or not.
Pennsylvania is one of 2 states that does not provide any state funding for the Public Defender's Office. Public defenders are funded by county taxes, resulting in disparity from one judicial district to another. How would you address this issue so all defendants have access to competent lawyers to protect their legal rights before the court?
I don't know that that's anything a judge could handle. I think that's more of an issue that should be brought up to the county commissioners in their funding. I realize there is a deficiency there, but I don't know that's necessarily anything that a judge could address. Again, other than to mete out justice fairly and impartially based on whoever is in front of them.
Alternatives to incarceration not only cost less, but often result in less recidivism. What is your view on alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders?
Well, in my mind, incarceration is the last resort. I think that, especially as taxpayers, if you read any studies, it's just ridiculous how much it costs to house prisoners, and alternatives essentially save taxpayers money by providing, again, rehabilitation versus punishment. Though I still believe there is a time and place for incarceration. I just think it's a last resort in most cases.
How would you deal with difficult cases, the cases that are so highly publicized?
Well, as a judge, that it's a lesser. There's not a whole lot that a judge would handle differently than a less publicized case versus a highly publicized case, other than trying to ensure that whether it's a plaintiff or a defendant or whoever is the highly publicized issue, gets a fair shake and, is handled impartially, and that justice is served.
Major crime cases are a great concern to voters. Can judges do anything to reduce crime and reduce repeat offenses?
Well, this goes back to your question about what factors do you consider in sentencing. And one of, I think, the greatest factors is the chance of recidivism, how serious the offense is to begin with, and what you can do to reduce that. And that plays into, again, rehabilitation or punishment, and locking a dangerous individual up to keep them to protect the public's interest would obviously be one of the scenarios.
Juveniles may face mandatory criminal charges. How can we protect our schools and our communities and at the same time not irrevocably hurt the juvenile who makes a mistake?
Well, the juvenile system is really geared more towards rehabilitation than anything else. And I think particularly in our county here, Berks County Juvenile Probation Office, they do a great job at supervising individuals, at rehabilitating individuals, and making sure that they doing their best to get these individuals back on track. And I would leave it at that.
Berks County has established special courts to address crimes connected to illnesses, such as a drugs court or a veterans court. Do you support alternatives to sentencing established by these courts? And would you like to consider additional special courts? And if so, for what groups?
I do support the special courts. I think that, again, they are more effective at rehabilitation and again, save taxpayer money. They are very intensive from my experience. I've had a number of individuals that I represented placed in these courts. They're very intensive, and I think they work. I mean, the statistics speak for themselves. The recidivism percentage is very low. So I mean, it, like I said, the statistics speak for themselves.
Medical marijuana is lawful in Pennsylvania, and yet active ingredients in marijuana remain a federally controlled substance. Do you support measures to make federal law more consistent with state laws? And please describe your approach to this inconsistency in our laws.
Quite honestly, it doesn't make sense to me that the feds haven't addressed this issue. I mean, it's kind of like this. All the states pretty much are thumbing their nose at the federal government and saying, "Listen, we don't care what you say. We're going to do our own things here." And I think what I would suggest, and this has nothing to do with being a common pleas judge, is that the federal legislature has to address that.
In Pennsylvania, judges run as members of a political party. What is the significance of party affiliation for judgeships?
Quite honestly, I don't think that it should have that great of a rule to determine who is the most appropriate individual to sit as a judge. It's an interesting dance that they do, but what also I don't think people realize is once a judge is elected, they cannot have any political activism or to really be involved with anything political. So, and it's not a political office, so they shouldn't. But the significance of party affiliation for judgeships, I think, is actually minimal.
How do you feel about nonpartisan selection of judges or merit selection of judges?
I'm a proponent of merit selection of judges for appellate court levels. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the Commonwealth Court, the Superior Court, those statewide elections, to me, it's just impossible for the voters to really know who is who and what is what. And I think that obviously merit selection is fraught with partisanship and things like that. But I think as a whole, merit selection, particularly for appellate judges, would be a better way to do things.
Past judicial campaigns here in Berks have been noted for high spending. Please explain your views on money in judicial politics.
Well, it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. It's an expensive undertaking. Advertising, that's what it's all about. In this particular race, though, given the COVID impact and and other things, I think that social media is taking over more than ever before. And what I believe, social media and advertising on social media is actually cheaper than billboards and TV commercials and newspapers and things like that. So I think that in this particular cycle, that advertising costs will be down.
Are you involved in volunteer or community work? If so, please tell us about it.
I'm active in my home parish of St. Catherine's of Siena in Reading here. And I'm raising 6 children, which is a project in and of itself.
Then I think we're ready for your closing statement, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name's Kurt Geishauser. I'm running for one of 2 positions with the Berks County Court of Common Pleas as a judge. I didn't get into my educational background very much, but I graduated from college with a degree in accounting. I went to Dickinson School of Law, where I got a Juris Doctorate, and then I went on to study some taxation and advanced issues at Villanova School of Law. From there, I've spent 25 years in various positions in civil litigation, criminal litigation, family law, bankruptcy law. I've pretty much done it all. I think I'm an appropriate candidate. Throughout my 20 years of practice, 25 years of practice, I've lived by the philosophy taught to me by my father-in-law, and that is that I that you can be a zealous advocate without really being a jerk, and that you should treat everyone involved with dignity and respect. And I would like to take that attitude with me to the bench. So I would appreciate any support that you would give me, and your vote on May 18th.
Thank you, Kurt Geishauser, for talking with us about the role of a Berks County Court of Common Pleas judge and your qualifications and your philosophy about that role. Viewers, please remember, the municipal primary election is May 18th. To vote, you must be registered by May 3rd. And when you do go to vote, polls are open from 7 in the morning till 8 at night, and you may vote at your polling place or by mail-in ballot. Now, this is a municipal primary election. In a primary election, Democrats and Republicans select their candidates for the fall election. So party members will vote for statewide and local judges, county coroner, prothonotary, treasurer, school directors, and city, township, and borough officials. But all voters, not just those in the main parties, all voters are encouraged to vote on amendments to our Pennsylvania Constitution, which will also be on the ballot. Now, to check your registration status or to request a mail-in ballot, you can go to votespa.com. That's votespa.com. For more information on other races, you can go to vote411.org, vote411.org. Or, if you prefer to talk to a live person in English or in Spanish, phone Berks County Election Services at 610-478-6490. That's 610-478-6490. And please, continue to watch BCTV. We will have more candidate interviews, and we will have information about the constitutional amendments. That program is coming up on the second Tuesday in April at 8 o'clock. For the League of Women Voters, I'm Judith Cranis. Good day.
We make about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.